Despite being one of the most revered people in American history, Benjamin Franklin had a wild sexual life. He had had a lot of sex. Everybody talks about it now. In 2003, Time magazine called him a babe magnet. Some estimate that he had 15 children out of wedlock. He was known to have had relationships with several women throughout his life. Americans today maintain a keen interest in Franklin's intimate life. It's part of public curiosity about the most famous founding father never to have been a president. Franklin wrote a letter listing the benefits of having sex with older women, which we will talk about later in this video. Any analysis of Benjamin Franklin's relationships must begin with his early years. He was an inquisitive, hormonal 14-year-old in 1720 who was fascinated by the ramblers and doxies that lined Boston's streets. Franklin relocated to Philadelphia when he was 17 years old, setting up shop in printing while also beginning to court Deborah Reed, who would become his future wife at the age of 15. However, by 1724, Franklin had left for London, and Deborah had become little more than a footnote to his nights spent in the beds of numerous scandalous women. After 2 years, he went back to Philadelphia, where in 1730 he wed Deborah in a common law ceremony. His philandering ways persisted despite the marriage vows. Benjamin Franklin's sexual history reveals how this highly regarded early American leader kept many personal secrets. Franklin's sexual proclivities were a frequent source of rumor for high society in America, Britain, and France during his lifetime. He left behind a lot of scandalous tales by the time he died in 1790. Women love intelligence, and Franklin certainly had intelligence to spare, not only theoretical science but practical as well. He was fat and bald, but Franklin understood the literary and philosophical arts of his time and could write volumes of his own. He was able to move between the serious and humorous with ease. His political and diplomatic abilities were without compare. He also was a master of social interaction and charisma. Benjamin Franklin had all the attributes women find attractive in a man. Here are some details concerning the lengthy and successful love life of Benjamin Franklin, from the fine establishments of brothels to the salons of Paris. He may have had 15 illegitimate children. Franklin has a well-accounted-for illegitimate child. A son was born to Franklin and Deborah Reed in 1731, the year of the couple's marriage. According to some historians, the child's mother was a maid named Barbara, who worked in Franklin's home. William Franklin was reared by Deborah as her stepson after she welcomed him into her family. William became a prominent political figure of his own, rising to the position of governor of New Jersey. Additionally, Deborah and Franklin had 2 children of their own, a girl named Sally who lived into her 60s, and a son who died at the age of 5 from smallpox. Some historians believe that Franklin may have fathered 15 illegitimate children throughout his life. However, researchers are unable to verify any additional information regarding his possible offspring. One such historian is Thomas A. Foster, author of Sex and the Founding Fathers, The American Quest for a Relatable Past. He may have been a member of a sex club. Some historians speculate that Franklin belonged to the Hellfire Club, also known as the Medmenham Monks, during his time in London from 1757 to 1775. These men belonged to a group of libertines notable for their rejection of religious restrictions and aberrant sexual appetites. Historians note that Franklin maintained strong relations with some of the most infamous members of the society, including Francis Dashwood, the group's founder, even though his real membership cannot be verified or refuted. Even in his 70s, he continued to charm and seduce women. Just before turning 70 in 1776, Franklin traveled to Paris. He had been dispatched to act as the United States Commissioner to France shortly after the country's independence. Even at his advanced years, he managed to woo many women while he was there. During a particular occasion, he received the honor of 300 French women who kissed both of his cheeks and placed a crown of laurels on his head. I doubt that his desire for intimacy decreased either. He saw Anne-Louise d'Ardencourt-Briand de Jouy, a young pianist and composer, and attempted to woo her, but was unsuccessful. She called him cher papa. Then Franklin developed feelings for and began courting Madame Helvetius, a wealthy noble widow. Franklin grew quite at ease in her and her guests' company at her estate in the French countryside. Madame Helvetius was even asked to marry Franklin, but she declined. He visited the red light districts frequently. Franklin openly encouraged people to live morally upright lives, as evidenced by his Poor Richard's Almanac. He listed 13 virtues that a respectable man should uphold in his memoirs, emphasizing that men should rarely use veneration, but for health or offspring, never to dullness, weakness, or the injury of your own or another's peace or reputation. He supposedly did not do such a thing in private. Franklin was a frequent visitor to London's parlours when he first arrived in 1724. He continued to do this until his senior years of life. He would always be spotted with women in a tavern at night. Biographer Carl van Doren stated, "In his morning litany, he could pray to be kept from lasciviousness, but when night came, lust might come with it. He went to women hungrily, secretly, and briefly. He possessed rank animal instincts and passions." Franklin's sexual habits were probably more daring than those of his contemporaries, given his penchant for visiting cathhouses and leaving amorous messages for young ladies. It is no use blinking the fact that Franklin's animal instincts and passions were strong and rank, that they led him to the commission of deplorable errata in his life, and that the taint of an irredeemable vulgarity is upon much of this man, wrote Albert Henry Smith, one of Franklin's biographers, in 1907. He preferred females who were way older. Franklin spent a large portion of his life working for newspapers and is thought to have been among the country's first advice columnists. In 1745, Franklin responded with an essay to a young man who had asked him for advice on controlling his libido. He made the case that older women make the greatest companions in the article, advice to a young man on the selection of a mistress. "In all your amours, you should prefer old women to young ones," he stated. He further stated, "The pleasure of corporal enjoyment with an old woman is at least equal and frequently superior, every knack being by practice capable of improvement." Franklin claims that senior women are so ungrateful and stupid. He attempted to sleep with the mistress of his friend. In 1724, Franklin traveled to London with his poet buddy James Ralph. The two fell out very quickly. Ralph's mistress had received a sexual approach from Franklin. Enraged, Ralph broke up with Franklin and declined to give him the £27 he owed him. He may have tried to seduce a mother and daughter. Franklin moved into an apartment in a Margaret Stephenson-owned building in London in 1757. Polly, Margaret's 18-year-old daughter, also resided there. Historians speculate that throughout the 15 years that Franklin resided in her home, Margaret and Franklin might have had an affair. Some believe that Franklin might have also attempted to pique Polly's interest in romance. He apparently had a lengthy correspondence with Polly because he was fond of her. He even ordered Polly, who was widowed, to relocate to Philadelphia so she could remain by his side until his death in 1790. He was involved with young women as he grew older. Even as he aged, Franklin was known to retain a robust libido. At the age of 48, Franklin met 23-year-old Catherine Ray in 1754. She resisted his advances when he made them. Still, the two continued to write, with Franklin making temporary attempts to court her into a relationship. Another event occurred in 1767 in London when Charles Wilson Peel, a friend of Franklin's, paid Franklin a visit in his apartment. When he opened the door, he discovered Franklin, then 61, cuddling and caressing a small child who was perched on his lap. Franklin, though plagued with fumbling age, needs nothing to excite him, but is too ready to engage when younger arms invite him, was a small joke about Franklin's taste for young women as he got older. Franklin may have married his wife to satisfy his libido. Franklin and Deborah Reed's common law union was probably more based on practicality than passion. She didn't appear to particularly attract him, and at one point he even likened her figure to a beer cup. According to some historians, Franklin wed her merely to have a partner with whom to vent his sexual arousal. Over the course of their 44-year marriage, during which 18 years were spent apart, he openly cheated on her. Deborah's husband was away on assignment when she suffered a stroke. Not wanting to see her again, Franklin left Philadelphia, and she died alone in 1774. He may have regretted his wandering eye. Franklin might have regretted his previous promiscuous behavior after leading a life of vice and excess. That hard-to-be-governed passion of youth had hurried me frequently into intrigues with low women that fell in my way, he said in his book.